I remember my last night shift at the hospital. It was just a few months ago, but it still won't leave my mind. I'd been working night shifts to pay for nursing school. The hospital was large and old, with buzzing fluorescent lights that flickered at odd times. It always felt empty during the night, just me and the echo of my footsteps. That night, everything started normal. I got called to room 204 around midnight. An elderly man was in there. He seemed agitated, mumbling about the lady in the shadows. I thought his medication was messing with him. I felt a chill but told myself it was nothing. As I walked the halls, things started to get strange. The lights flickered above me. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just a glitch. Then, I heard a melody, soft and haunting. It sounded like a piano. I looked around, but all I found was silence. I felt uneasy. While restocking, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. A shadow slipped past me, and I turned to see nothing. My heart raced. I shook my head, thinking I was tired. But I remembered the old man. Maybe he saw something. When I returned to room 204, he was even more upset. "She's coming for me," he said, staring past me. His eyes were big with fear. I felt cold sweat on my neck. I tried to comfort him, but he just repeated, "The lady in the shadows." I didn't know what to do. I thought about calling for help but froze. Something held me back. The rest of my shift was a blur. I walked the halls, my heart pounding. The shadows felt alive, watching me. I couldn't shake the feeling. Each time I passed room 204, it felt like time was running out. Then I heard it again, that piano music. It played louder, echoing through the halls. I had to find the source. I turned a corner and felt a chill run through me. There, in the dark, was a figure. A woman, her long hair hanging around her shoulders, stood perfectly still. I blinked, and she vanished. I felt fear gripping me. I rushed back to room 204. I pushed the door open. The elderly man lay still on the bed, his eyes wide and unblinking, fixed on the ceiling. He looked terrified. I felt something twist in my stomach. What had he seen? I wanted to shake him awake, to ask him what was happening, but I felt frozen. I stood there, my breath caught in my throat. The air felt thick, heavy with something unseen. I thought about the piano and the lady in the shadows. What did it all mean? I had no answers, just questions. Even now, I replay the night in my mind. Why did that musical tune haunt me? What truth lay behind the elderly man's words? The hospital has never felt the same since, and I still can't shake that feeling of dread. I tried to put that night behind me, but it lingered in my thoughts. I couldn't focus in class. My nursing program felt overwhelming, and every time I closed my eyes, I heard that faint piano melody. Each note tugged at something deep inside me, driving me to the edge of confusion. After a week of torturous reflection, I decided I needed to return to the hospital. Maybe facing my fears would help. Maybe I'd find answers about the old man and the woman in the shadows. It was a Sunday evening when I finally gathered the courage. The night shift was dead quiet, as if the hospital itself was holding its breath. As I walked down the familiar sterile hallways, I felt a rush of anxiety and anticipation. The lights flickered, the hum a reminder of my previous visit. I hesitated near room 204. Should I check in? My heart raced, but I pushed the door open. The room was empty. The bed was made, and the dim light barely lit the sterile space. For a moment, I felt a wave of relief, as if I'd avoided whatever nightmare had taken shape there. I turned to leave when a movement caught my eye. A piece of paper lay crumpled on the floor near the bed. I picked it up, my hands shaking slightly. It was a note, hastily written. "She's not just a shadow, it said. She wants my soul. My blood ran cold. The words felt alive, wrapping around my spine like a vice. Who wrote this? Was it the elderly man? I shivered, thinking of the terror in his eyes. Behind me, I heard it again, the piano melody starting softly, as if the very walls were inviting me deeper into the mystery. Against my better judgment, I followed the sound. I walked through empty hallways until I reached the end of the corridor. There, I found a door slightly ajar. The music was louder, almost haunting. I could feel it vibrate in my chest. I pushed the door open and froze. It was a small break room, cluttered with old furniture. The piano sat in the corner, covered in dust. No one was playing it, and yet the beautiful, chilling notes continued. I felt a pull toward it, a mix of fear and curiosity. As I stepped closer, the music faded. Suddenly, everything went cold. I felt a presence behind me. I turned swiftly, and there she was, the woman from the shadows. Her hair hung low, a veil of darkness framing her pale face. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Instead, a wave of dread washed over me. I couldn't move. The shadows around her seemed to pulsate, stretching toward me with a life of their own. I backed away, heart pounding, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Then, as quickly as she appeared, she vanished into the darkness. Breathless, I stumbled back outside, clutching the note tightly. My mind raced. Who was she? What did she want? The dread from that last shift returned, more potent than before. I had gone looking for answers, but now I was left with even more questions. I needed to know the truth. Desperation clawed at me. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for whatever lay ahead. I realized I couldn't leave this mystery unsolved. With renewed determination, I turned to the nurse's station to uncover more about room 204 and its last occupant. What I found next would change everything. I approached the nurse's station, my hands trembling as I clutched the note. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered, and I felt a chill race down my spine. I needed to gather my thoughts before speaking. The nurse on duty was a woman named Clara, someone I'd seen before but never really talked to. "Hey, Clara," I said, trying to sound casual despite my racing heart. "Can I ask you about room 204? I heard some unusual things about the last patient." Her expression shifted instantly. Concern mixed with something else, fear. She glanced around as if worried someone might overhear. "What did you hear?" I hesitated, thinking about the note. "I found this," I said, handing it to her. It was on the floor. Clara read it quickly, her eyes widening. "This is serious." She shifted uncomfortably, glancing towards the hallway leading to the rooms. The man in 204 was very disturbed before he passed. He spoke of shadows and a woman, but I thought it was just his imagination. But he wrote this. He knew something, I pressed, frustration seeping into my tone. "What happened to him?" She sighed and flicked her gaze to the floor. "He suffered from dementia. Sometimes he would become agitated, terrified of something he saw. But he was sweet, and I attended to him with care. It seemed like he was haunted, but I didn't think." She stopped abruptly and looked back at me, the color draining from her face. "You shouldn't have gone back there." "Why not?" "I can't just ignore this," I said, anger bubbling inside me along with a sense of urgency. What was really going on? Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They say she comes for souls, especially those on the brink." "Who?" I asked, leaning closer, urging her to continue. "The woman in the shadows. She appears when there's death nearby. Some staff have seen her wandering the halls at night. I thought it was just a story to frighten the new interns, but after what you experienced, maybe it's true." Panic clenched my stomach. "What do you mean? Has anyone ever tried to?" Before I could finish, a loud crash echoed from down the corridor. Clara's eyes went wide, and my heart raced. We both turned to look down the dim hallway, where shadows danced in the flickering light. "Stay here," Clara said, her voice shaking. She grabbed a flashlight from the station and rushed toward the noise without waiting for my response. I stood frozen, wrestling with fear and worry. Moments felt like hours. Just then, a chilling sound pierced the air, a soft, ghostly melody. It was the same piano tune. My heart leaped in recognition and dread. Clara's flashlight beam danced around the hallway as she moved further away, and I felt an uncontrollable urge to follow her. Taking a deep breath, I rushed after her, my instinct screaming that something terrible was about to happen. As I turned the corner, I saw her standing in front of room 204, the door wide open. The melody played on, wrapping around us like a fog. And that's when I saw it, an outline of a figure standing at the end of the corridor, bathed in the flickering light. Everything around me seemed to fade as I realized the figure was the woman from my vision, her long hair flowing like smoke. She turned her head, and though I couldn't see her face clearly, I could feel her gaze piercing into me. My breath caught in my throat as the music swelled, drowning out my thoughts. I was too close to turn back now, but dread seeped into my bones, urging me to run. I knew then that whatever truth lay ahead was potentially worse than I could fathom. The hallway felt longer than ever as I stood transfixed by the figure. The music pulsated through me, weaving in and out of my thoughts like a sinister lullaby. I could barely breathe, each inhale heavy with fear. Clara called out, her voice trembling, "What is she doing?" I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came. Instead, I took a cautious step forward. The wooden floor creaked under my foot. The woman's gaze shifted, locking onto me. A chill crawled up my spine, and panic surged once again. The faint melody echoed louder, spilling into the open doorway of room 204 like an invitation. Shadows coiled around the figure, flickering like candle flames. Clara's flashlight flickered, casting erratic beams of light as she stumbled back, an expression of terror frozen on her face. "Get away from there!" she shouted, her voice rising in urgency. That snapped me back. I turned to her, panic setting in. "What do we do?" "Leave. Now." She grabbed my arm, pulling me away, but I hesitated. My eyes were glued to the woman, who took a delicate step forward, as if ready to glide down the hall. Then it happened. The light from Clara's flashlight blinked out. The corridor plunged into darkness. "Clara!" I shouted, panic slamming against my chest. I swung my own flashlight, but it flickered weakly, revealing just shadows. I scanned the area, heart racing. The music stopped, swallowed by the silence. I felt something brush against my arm, cold and ethereal. I jerked away, gasping, and turned back to Clara, who was now just a silhouette against the darkness. "Stay close," I urged, but doubt clawed at me. I could hear something, a whisper. It was soft yet filled with urgency. "Come closer!" My instincts screamed to run, but my feet felt cemented to the ground. The whispers beckoned, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being drawn closer to the woman. Suddenly, the darkness shifted as the emergency lights flickered back on. The figure was no longer at the end of the corridor. It was now closer, just outside the entrance to room 204. A low hum accompanied the return of the lights, vibrating through the walls. "Clara," I whispered, "where did she go?" "Don't look." Clara's voice was frantic now. She tugged at my arm, pulling me toward the exit. I pulled back, eyes darting between the room and the figure. But just before I could look away, I caught a glimpse of her face, pale, almost featureless beneath the dim light. The corners of her mouth lifted into a grin, unsettling and wide. "Run!" Clara shouted again, desperation underscoring her voice. That snapped me from my trance. I finally tore my eyes away and bolted down the hallway, Clara right beside me. As we sprinted past the nurse's station, I risked one last glance over my shoulder. The doorway to room 204 was empty, but the air felt thick with a lingering presence. Just as we reached the stairwell, I heard the piano music start again, more frantic this time. My heart raced as Clara flung the door open. "Where do we go?" I gasped, my lungs burning. But even as I asked, I knew the answer was buried deeper within the hospital, and I needed to uncover it. "Anywhere but here," she said, pulling me into the stairwell. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us, its echo reverberating through the silence. I felt the weight of something unnameable close in around us. Then, I saw a shadow creeping beneath the door, long and twisted, like fingers reaching for us. I turned to Clara, horror etched on my face. "We need to find out what is happening," I said, my voice shaking. "Trust me, we don't want to know," she insisted. But we had no choice now. Whatever was haunting this place had intertwined our fates, and there was still plenty left to uncover. We hurried down the stairwell, the dim emergency lights casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. Clara and I moved in silence, but my mind raced with questions. What had we just witnessed? Who was that woman? As we reached the landing, Clara suddenly stopped. "This isn't safe," she whispered. I glanced back at her, worry etched across my face. "Where do we go next?" "That way," she pointed down another corridor branching off from the stairwell. "The supply room should be close." I nodded, even though every instinct in me screamed to turn back, to flee the building entirely. Yet we couldn't leave without answers. I couldn't allow fear to rule us now. We stepped into the corridor. The music still played from somewhere in the distance, an unsettling melody that echoed the fear inside me. I caught the flicker of movement in my peripheral vision but quickly turned my head, finding nothing but shadows again. "Did you see that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Clara bit her lip, nodding. "Let us hurry." We walked briskly, turning another corner. The air felt thick, oppressive as if the walls themselves were curving around us. I glanced down at my flashlight, the beam wavering between desperate flares of light. I turned it off to preserve the battery. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath coming in quick bursts. When we reached the supply room, Clara pushed the door open, and it creaked like a sigh. Inside, the shelves were crammed with hospital supplies. I spotted bandages, 4 bags, and unopened medicine boxes. It felt mundane compared to everything outside, but the room also carried a weight of forgotten secrets. "Grab whatever you think we need," Clara urged. I moved to a nearby shelf, shoving supplies into my backpack. But my fingers brushed against something else, the edge of a faded paper. Curiosity gripped me as I pulled it out. It was a report marked confidential. "What is it?" Clara asked, her voice rising with impatience. "Just a report," I replied, trying to focus on the words scrawled across the page. As I read, bile rose in my throat. It detailed missing patients, the dates growing closer, tightening like a noose. And then there was a note about a woman who had been seen wandering the halls, mistaken for a patient who had died years ago. Just as I processed the last line, a note about her playing a haunting melody on the hospital's old piano. A loud crash shattered the stillness outside the door. "Did you hear that?" Clara's eyes widened. "Yeah. We need to go." I stuffed the paper into my backpack, heart racing. As we crept toward the exit, I heard a voice drifting through the corridor, low and melodic like the piano from earlier. It still carried that peculiar urge to draw me in. "Come play with me." A shudder ran through me. Clara's grip on my arm tightened. "Keep moving," she hissed. We burst out of the supply room and into the hallway, the voice echoing in our ears. My mind raced with a new problem. What if she knows we're here? I said as dread coiled in my stomach. "She probably does," Clara responded, her face pale but resolute. We shot down the corridor, desperately trying to put distance between ourselves and the voice lingering behind us. If the piano had been a part of this nightmare, then the haunting melody could lead us to the truth or our doom. My feet moved as if guided by instinct. I had to figure this out, but gratification was mixed with desperation. What other horrors awaited us in this building? That's when everything went dark again. All lights blinked out at once, plunging us into the abyss. A scream caught in my throat as I gripped Clara's hand tightly. Then I heard a faint, persistent music rising from the darkness, more frantic than before. I stumbled, disoriented in the pitch black. The eerie music was all around us, an echo that seemed to vibrate through the very walls. I could barely make out Clara as she moved closer to me, her breath shaky. "We need to find the stairs," she whispered, panic threading through her voice. "Right," I replied, but where were they? The last thing I wanted was to stand still in this suffocating darkness, where who knew what lurked just beyond my vision. We pressed on, hands moving cautiously along the wall as if it might lead us to safety. My mind replayed the details of the report, the missing patients, and the woman haunting the halls. What if she was still out there? Just then, a flicker of light caught my attention. I turned my head, my heart catching as I saw it. A flashlight beam darting through the corridor, wavering like a beacon. Someone else was here. Over there. I pointed, my voice rising in hope. The light swept closer, illuminating the corridor in brief flashes. But then it vanished, swallowed by shadows. What was that? Clara murmured, fear palpable. Maybe a staff member? I suggested, though it sounded weak even to me. My feet moved toward where the light had been. The urge to follow it filled me with both hope and dread. We reached the spot where the light had appeared, and I squinted down the darkened passage. The silence around us was suffocating. And then, as if called forth by our presence, the music surged again, more intense, and a chill raced down my spine. "Look," Clara said, hovering at my side. She pointed to a door slightly ajar at the end of the corridor, a faint glow spilling from within. "Should we check it?" I asked, my heartbeat quickening. "I don't know if we have a choice," she replied. We approached cautiously, the music growing louder with each step. I pushed the door wider, and the sight inside made me recoil. A room filled with old hospital equipment lay before us, but it was the figure at the piano that drew my eyes. A woman sat hunched over the keys, her fingers moving swiftly and fluidly, playing the haunting melody we had heard earlier. "Do you see that?" Clara whispered, gripping my arm. Yeah, I barely breathed, the realization washing over me. This was the woman from the report. The dead patient, with mournful eyes lost in the music. Suddenly, her head snapped up. The light in the room flickered, revealing her face a mixture of sorrow and something darker. "Why won't you play with me?" she called, her voice almost melodic, yet laced with desperation. A chill traced its way through my body, and I felt an undeniable urge to step closer. "Let us go," Clara pulled at me, urgency snapping me back to reality. I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind us, the sound reverberating loudly. Panic surged. What just happened? "Something's wrong," Clara said, her voice rising as she shoved against the door. I raced to help her, feeling the temperature drop. The music had grown louder, oppressive. "She wants us here," I shouted, fear gripping my voice. Then I saw a glimpse through the window beside the door. The woman was rising, her features twisting with a smile that wasn't friendly. "Run!" I screamed, and we shoved against the door one last time. As we broke free into the corridor, an icy scream erupted behind us. I glanced back, and that was when I saw her pale face, twisted in an expression of longing and rage. "Play with me." We sprinted down the darkened hallway, the echoes of the piano fading but the weight of her presence lingering with us. Where was the exit? Then I remembered there was another stairwell nearby, somewhere near the supply room. But would we make it before she caught up? Each pounding step felt like a countdown, and my instinct screamed for us to move faster. Not much further, I urged Clara as we dashed past empty rooms and flickering lights. That was when I heard it again, the desperate call echoing through the air. Come play with me. The fear ignited in my chest. We weren't just running from her. We were racing against something that felt far more ominous than the dark hallways of this cursed hospital. I didn't want to find out what would happen if she caught us. I could hear Clara's hurried breaths behind me as I pushed forward, searching for any sign of salvation. My mind raced. The exit had to be close. The sound of her music echoed in my ears, mingling with the flutter of panic in my chest. It was as if she was chasing us, her voice a haunting lullaby coaxing us back to her. Where is it? Clara gasped, her fingers grazing the walls as we rounded a corner. I can't just keep going, I shouted, desperation creeping into my tone. And then, just ahead, a light flickered from a doorway. My heart jumped. Maybe it was the stairwell. We skidded to a halt, and I pushed against the door. The rusted hinges creaked, and the dim light spilled from within, revealing stacks of boxes and old medical supplies. I barely had a chance to see everything before Clara stumbled in, pulling me after her. Is this it? She asked, scanning the darkness. I nodded, darting to the end of the room. There. The door. We reached a faded door marked stairwell. I turned the handle, but it wouldn't budge. What? No. Try again, Clara urged, her voice trembling. I pushed harder, but the door wouldn't yield. Panic clawed at me, every second feeling like a heartbeat spent in fear. And then the lights went out. The bulb flickered once, twice, and then plunged us into darkness. Clara's grip tightened around my wrist. Not now, she whispered, trembling. I felt around, desperate for a way out. Stay close, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Suddenly, the music returned, soft at first. It wrapped around us like a suffocating blanket. The tune was slow, haunting. It pulled at something deep inside me. Can you hear her? Clara asked, her voice cracking. Before I could respond, a shape emerged from the shadows near the doorway we had come from. I squinted, trying to discern what it was. It moved slowly, methodically. The flickering light struggled to illuminate the room, and that was when I saw it clearly. A dark figure stood in the doorway, eyes filled with intense longing, framed by long, wispy hair. It was her. Play with me, she beckoned, her voice dripping with despair. Get away, I shouted, spinning away from her. But there was no way out. We were trapped. My heart slammed against my chest as I cast a frantic glance around the room. What else was there? In that moment of frozen terror, I caught sight of something glinting beneath the pile of boxes. I rushed over, clearing debris until my fingers brushed against a rusty old piano key. Without thinking, I pressed down, the sound washing over us. Stop! What are you doing? Clara screamed, but it was too late. The moment the note rang out, the figure jerked, her face twisting in surprise. Why won't you play with me? She stepped closer, the music binding us both. A dreadful dread washed over me. Instinct kicked in, and I pressed more keys, creating dissonance. The moment stretched, reality blurring as her attention fixed deeper on me. The air thickened with something almost electric. Clara pulled at my arm, urging me away. I had to think fast. This isn't working, we can't stay here. With each note, I felt the energy shift around us, wrapping around my mind. It was almost an invitation, urging me to stay and play. Clara! I shouted, snapping back to reality. She pulled me toward the back of the room, away from the darkness, and the figure lunged forward, almost reaching us. That was when the door behind me swung open, bright light flooding the room. "Hurry!" Without thinking, I sprinted toward it, dragging Clara with me. The moment we burst through the door, I turned back for just a heartbeat. But she was already fading into the shadows, her voice trailing behind us. "Play with me." I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. I stumbled into the hallway, gasping for air. The brightness of the corridor felt blinding after the darkness we'd just escaped. Clara was right behind me, her face pale and eyes wide. I pulled her away from the door, the echoes of the haunting melody still lingering in my ears. "Where do we go now?" she asked, her voice shaky. I shook my head, unsure. "We find a way out of this place." The hallway was lined with outdated paintings that seemed to follow us as we walked. Each step echoed, and I could swear I heard whispers. The oppressive silence was broken only by Clara's footsteps and my quickening breath. I pushed down the dread settling in my stomach. "Did that really happen?" Clara whispered, glancing back toward the door, as if expecting the figure to come bursting through. "Yes," I said firmly. "It happened. We have to keep moving." We turned another corner, and a chill crept down my spine. A door, slightly ajar, caught my attention. I glanced at Clara, who nodded, and we crept closer. The air felt thick with something unspoken, something lingering. I pushed the door open just wide enough to peek inside. The room was filled with old hospital equipment, jars on shelves filled with strange-looking specimens. Dust hung in the air like fog. As I stepped in, I caught sight of something horrifying: an old, rusted surgical table in the center, stained and surrounded by dusty medical textbooks. "Let us just go," Clara said, her voice trembling. "Wait," I said, curiosity pulling me forward despite the warning bells in my head. "What is this place?" That's when I saw it on a desk cluttered with forgotten medical instruments. A small, weathered music box sat open. It tinkled out a soft, melancholic tune that struck me as familiar. My heart raced again. It was similar to the melody that haunted us. "Maybe we should," I started, but Clara's hand gripped my arm tightly. "Don't touch anything," she warned. "We need to leave." But the music tugged at me, filling the air with an alluring call. I hesitated, the melody wrapping around my thoughts. What if it holds the key? Or what if it brings her back? The tension soared, and I took a deep breath, forcing myself to look away. The music box was a trap. Whatever it held, it wouldn't lead us to safety. I stepped back, and the moment I did, the door suddenly slammed shut behind us. The sound echoed ominously, a finality that sent panic surging through me. "Open it!" Clara yelled, pushing against the door. I joined her, fighting against its weight as adrenaline coursed through my veins. As we struggled, a new sound filled the air, a voice softly singing along with the music. My heart sank. It was her. "Play with me." The walls tightened around us. Every instinct screamed for escape, but our desperate wrestling with the door felt futile. Then, from the corner of my eye, I noticed shadows shifting within the corners of the room, shapes forming and dissolving. I froze. "Clara," I murmured. "Look." There was movement, shadows weaving together, and a figure emerged. I recognized the wispy hair and those longing eyes, now glowing faintly. I couldn't question how she followed us, only that we had to escape now more than ever. "Run!" I yelled, yanking the door again. With a final heave, it swung open just enough for us to squeeze through. We rushed back into the hallway, panting heavily, but then I realized Clara had gone silent beside me. I turned to see her frozen in place, staring wide-eyed. "Clara! We need to go." But her gaze was fixated on something behind me. A shiver ran down my spine as I slowly turned, dreading what I might see. That's when I heard it, a soft, sad melody playing again from somewhere deep within the hospital, a haunting echo that felt impossibly close. I swallowed hard, panic clawing at my throat. The melody grew louder, weaving through the air like a cold mist. I could almost feel the shadows creeping toward us, coaxing me to turn back, to see what awaited in the depths of the hospital. "Clara, we can't stay here," I urged, but she stood frozen, her eyes wide and terrified. "Can't you hear it?" she whispered. "She's calling us." The shadows danced closer behind me, and dread surged through me. I couldn't let the melody ensnare us again. I grabbed Clara's arm, snapping her back to reality. "We need to go. Now." With a forceful tug, I pulled her down the hallway, away from the door and deeper into the unknown. The echoes of our footsteps reverberated with a rhythmic urgency. Behind us, the haunting song lingered, a cruel reminder of the danger that followed. As we rounded another corner, I caught sight of a stairwell at the end of the hall. A flickering light illuminated the steps, and I knew we had to reach it. "There. We can get out through the stairs," I shouted, my voice mingling with a rising sense of hope. "Do you think it's safe?" Clara asked, her breath shaky. I hesitated. But the music tugged at my mind again, urging me to linger, to listen. "It has to be safer than this." We dashed toward the stairwell, the flickering light casting eerie shadows on the walls. As we approached the door, I could feel my heart race louder than the melody echoing in the distance. I pushed the door open, and it creaked ominously as we stepped inside. The light was weak here, barely illuminating the damp, concrete walls. I felt an overwhelming weight settle over me, as if the shadows were stretching out, trying to drag us back. I shone my phone's flashlight down the steps. Gaps in the railing revealed a long drop, adding to my unease. "Let us hurry," I said, hoping to quell the fear dragging at my feet. We started down the stairs, two at a time, the smell of mildew mixing with an underlying scent I couldn't quite place. Halfway down, Clara stumbled, grasping the railing for support. "What's that?" she gasped, looking back over her shoulder. I turned. There, in the dim light, stood a figure silhouetted at the top of the stairs. The same long hair, glowing eyes. It was her. The figure seemed to be watching us, waiting. The soft melody poured from her, a siren's call enticing us back. "Keep moving," I shouted, grabbing Clara's arm again. We hurried down the steps, dread boiling in my gut. With each footfall, I risked a glance back. The figure hadn't moved, yet I felt the weight of her gaze pressing into my skin. That's when I heard the door at the top of the stairs slam shut. The echo reverberated, a final, definitive sound that sent icy fingers curling around my spine. We were trapped. "What do we do?" Clara's voice trembled, her eyes darting between the dark stairwell and the door we had just passed. Panic threatened to engulf me. "We have to keep going," I insisted, forcing my legs to move faster despite the heaviness dragging at me. The steps seemed to stretch endlessly. Just when I thought we'd never reach the bottom, I spotted a glimmer of light below. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. Suddenly, I felt a cold breeze sweep past us. Everything around us dimmed, and the soft melody transformed into a discordant wailing that made my blood run cold. The shadows swirled, forming tight around us as chills raced up my arms. "Turn back," I whispered, fear creeping into my voice. But as I looked back, I saw what I dreaded. The figure had followed us down, the glowing eyes now locked on us, and the melody twisting into something sinister. Now, with nowhere to run, I realized we had entered into a far greater nightmare than I could ever imagine. I stumbled toward the light, and Clara followed closely, her breath quick and panicked. The wailing crescendo echoed around us, a desperate cry clawing at the walls. Each footfall was a race against the growing darkness that enveloped us, the figure just behind, relentless in her pursuit. "Almost there," I gasped, summoning every ounce of strength as the stairs leveled out and opened into a small landing. But the way ahead was blocked by a heavy metal door, reinforced with steel. "What now?" I muttered, heart pounding. Clara's eyes darted around, searching for some way out, but the haunting melody grew louder. "We can't go back," she said. Her voice trembled, filled with an urgency that fueled my own fear. I glanced back at the shadowy figure, her presence solidifying the weight of dread in my chest. The soft glow from her eyes pierced the dimness, and her lips parted, the melody spilling into the hallway like a noxious fog. "We have to break through," I yelled, slamming my shoulder against the door, the impact reverberating through me. "Help me," Clara urged, rushing to my side. We threw ourselves against the door again and again, but it stood firm against our desperation. "Damn it!" I shouted, pounding my fists against the cold metal surface. Hope began to wane as I felt the coldness creeping in, not just the chill of the air, but a deeper sense of despair. Every thud against the door felt like it was driving nails into our fate. The melody shifted, morphing into a cacophony of whispers. "Come, play with me." It twisted reality, pulling at my very essence, teasing at the scared child within that just wanted to comply and not fight. "Focus," I commanded Clara, shaking her shoulders. "Remember the report. We need to find a way to stop her from coming after us. What if she wants something?" Clara's voice trembled, her eyes wide with fear. Before I could argue, the tone of the music shifted again. It was now a desperate plea, and in that moment, I saw movement in the shadows behind the door. The figure pressed against it, her face agonized as if caught between realms. "Play with me," she echoed again, a haunting sonata merging with her voice. Then something clicked in my mind. "The music box," I said suddenly. "It's not just a curse, it's a connection. If we can disrupt that connection." "What do you mean?" Clara asked frantically. "I don't know. But the music is how she traps people. If I can play something, if we can disrupt her song, maybe it will banish her." "But where?" Clara was glancing at our surroundings, panic growing. I scanned the landing, and out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a broken piano, a relic of a long-forgotten time leaning against the far wall. The keys looked dusty, but this idea fueled my hope. "Over there," I shouted, racing toward it. Clara followed, her breath choppy. We reached the piano, and I opened the lid. The keys felt ancient, but instinct kicked in. "Help me," I declared, urgency propelling me as my fingers danced across the keys, striking discordant notes. The figure shrieked, and I could feel the shadows retreat slightly. Clara chimed in, pressing down on the keys beside me. We played with all our might, the melody shifting from the haunting lullaby to something chaotic and raw. "Keep going," I urged her, and the wail of the figure became a symphony of anger. She lunged at us, but her form twisted in the air, disrupting the flow of her essence as the music battled against her call. Suddenly, the shadows stuttered, flickered like an old film caught in the projector. The piano started to resonate through the corridor, a wave of sound pushing back against the darkness. In that moment, the door shook violently, the haunting figure pressing against it, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in her glowing eyes. "Please!" Clara screamed into the void of sound. "You don't have to do this. You can leave." The figure hesitated, her own melody shattering with discord. It was as if the very essence of her being struggled against the music we played. Each key struck set her back, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. My heart raced, urging me to keep going. Deliberately, I switched the rhythm, creating an erratic tempo. "Clara!" I shouted. "Follow my lead." Together we pounded on the keys, every note a battle cry. With one final disharmonious chord, the entire structure trembled. The shadows convulsed violently, and the woman's cry morphed into an anguished scream. The door exploded open, sending us tumbling back. I blinked, disoriented. What just happened? Clara pulled me up, the fear etched deep in her eyes. "It's gone," she whispered, glancing around the now empty hallway. No eerie music, no shadows lingering. But as I took a step forward, a chill lingered on my skin, the air still thick with unresolved tension. Did we really get rid of her?" I asked, dread curling back into my chest. "I don't know," Clara admitted. "But we should get out of here." As we stumbled down the hall toward the exit, I couldn't shake the questions that followed like dark shadows behind us. I glanced back once more. Did she truly vanish, or was she merely lying in wait? The hospital felt different now, but the air still carried a melody and echo I knew would haunt my dreams. I left that night with pounding hearts and unanswered questions, the embers of the unknown still flickering in the dark corners of my mind. I still think about it sometimes, the woman in the shadows, if she is still out there, lurking in the memories of all who passed through those halls. I've never returned to that hospital, and I wonder how many more were left to unravel its secrets. But mostly, I try not to think about it.